Hi golfers, Nick here from Nick Telly Golf. It's Friday, so welcome to another lesson on golf tips. This week on golf tips, we're going to talk about the grid. It's probably the most popular question right now on my channel, apart from my beard and how to hit the driver with a stack and tilt golf swing. We're going to talk about the grid, which is behind me. For those who don't know what the grid is, that's the grid. We're going to talk about the grid, how to set it up, how to play the ball position, and how you can shape shots using the grid. Guys, it's going to give you a rough idea on where the grid comes from and why it's angled like this. Now, the golf swing would actually be more of an arc, but we use the straight lines just to give you a visual. So the golf club is angled to the ground here. If the golf club was angled dead straight, the swing plane would go up and down in a straight line. We would be swinging up and down the line. However, because the club's angled, the natural swing plane is to actually move around the body in a bit of an arc. So this is why these lines are angled. So we have the outside one here, which represents the club path, and we have the inside one here that represents the hand path. So just to give you guys a little bit of an idea, I get this question a lot about how to set this up. So I always have the first line that I do is the straight line here. Then I angle the club line and the hand line sort of parallel, and then I have this position which we're going to talk about in a second for the ball position. But just to give you guys a little bit of an idea, these lines are roughly at 20 degrees. They don't have to be exact when you're practicing. It's really just of giving you guys a visual aid when you're hitting balls. In the other bays here we have permanent marker in the mat just to give golfers a visual. So I would have these lines maybe a bit wider in an ideal world. When you set up to the ball, that club should be on the club line, and the hand path line, I'd probably have it a little bit closer to my feet here, so they're below my hands in an ideal world. It's just that on these mats here with these strings, they get in the way of the feet, so I can't have them exactly where I want them. But in the other bays here we use at GOLFTEC, we have these lines in permanent marker, which is probably a better visual to use when you're practicing. So that just gives you a little bit of an idea of how to sort of set up the grid. I want to give you golfers a little bit of an idea or visual here what happens. So this club should be tracking up this line here. So you can see here, this point is the left shoulder where the club would reach its most outward point of the journey before it moves back around to the left. So if we keep the club on plane on the grid, it will move around in more of an arc, maybe not quite as an angled as these are, but it just gives you a good visual. We're going to have the ball to start with, 2 balls behind the left shoulder. So this would be the center point where the left shoulder is. This is 1 ball back, that's 2 balls back. That's where I have it for my standard position. That helps me hit slightly out, so that club path is traveling outwards to the right here, helps me draw the golf ball, so the draw is built in. But what happens when we play the ball further back? So if we play the ball, say 4 balls back from the left shoulder, what happens to the club path then? What happens if we play it even further back, say 6 balls back? What happens to the club path? We're going to be discussing this today. Then we're going to test out what happens when we play the ball on the left shoulder, and then what happens when you play the ball forward of the left shoulder. So I'm going to show you guys how to shape the ball using the grid. So my first ball position will be my standard, which is like 2 balls behind my left shoulder. I've got my grid set up here with the T-claws, as you can see. So it's on that position of that white and blue one. So that's about 2 balls behind the left shoulder, handles forward. From the face on camera there, you can see that. And the face would be slightly open to the target here. I want this ball to start right, so I know it's going to draw. So this should be a few degrees into out of my standard ball position here. So you'll take that, it was pretty straight, felt pretty good, so good sort of distance there. So I'm expecting this to be a few degrees into out. You see a tight little draw, so that's like a standard ball position where you don't want to get too much shape on the ball. So the club path there was about 4.4 degrees into out, face slightly closed, so pretty good shot. That's like a standard shot for me using the grid with the ball like 2 balls behind the left shoulder. What happens when we move the ball further back? So let's go a bit further back here. Let's go say 4 balls behind the left shoulder. So I know, I'm going to show you guys here, this club path is actually going to move more out to the right. So I'm actually going to open the face a little bit more than I did on that previous shot. So I know this should draw a little bit more. So this will be the same swing. So let's see what happens there. So ball started out a bit more to the right that time. Didn't quite draw back to the line. But I know certainly that ball position being further back, it's going to deliver that club path more out to the right. Just depends where the club face is as it delivers into the ball. So this time 7.8 degrees into out. So you can see just moving it back a little bit, move the path more out to the right. Just made sure I had that face a little bit more open there. So it was closed to path, but obviously more open to the target than the previous shot. So let's go a bit further back now. So let's go say 6. So we've gone 2, 4, 6. So I'm expecting this path to go out maybe closer to 10 here. Again, face more, a bit more open. Pretty good shot. So now I'm expecting to get more shape, but again, face was a little bit more open. Again, probably similar sort of shot. Went out to the right, drew back. So it'd be interesting to see what the club data was on that one. So that one just moved back a little bit further to like 6 balls. Definitely a little bit more shape on the ball. So yeah, 9 degrees that time into out. So you can see progressively moving that ball further back is changing the path. So you probably ask, why don't you hit it straight? Well, I wish I could hit it straight every time. I think when you play the ball on the center of the grid, on the left shoulder, for me, it's a little bit hard to get the contact right. I think to hit a straight shot in golf is very difficult as we play golf on an angle. So let's try and put the ball on the left shoulder. So this could push or it could pull slightly, just depending on club path. So let's try and get that off the left shoulder. So a little bit higher, just a slight pull that time. But that path is definitely going to be straighter in the ball. With the ball on the left shoulder, for me, I don't particularly hit the ball as well from there. I hit the ball maybe a bit too high, a bit too spinny. Struggle a little bit with the contact. So it was a slight pull, but not a bad shot. So yeah, 1 degree into out, as you can see there. Maybe a little bit higher, but face was slightly closed. That's why I think to hit a straight shot is very difficult, right? That face was only slightly closed, but it's going to make the ball pull to the left. So now what happens when we put the ball further forward of the left shoulder, so this is like a ball forward, I'm actually going to just close the face to the target. So I know this ball should fade a little bit, but should be open to the path. So this would be having the ball a bit further forward, which again, I don't particularly like. There are other ways to shape the ball using the grid. I'm just using a sort of standard setup and swing, just to show you guys. A little bit harder to get the contact. That time you can see the ball fading off. So that's 5 shots there, all different sort of club paths and data. Let's quickly take a look at that one. So definitely the contact wasn't as good. Tried my best to hit that one. It did fade. Started very fraction left, the line faded off. Only went out to 157. So yeah, club path 2.4 degrees. I'm about to end, the angle attack wasn't as downwards on that one. So definitely some differences there. When you place that ball on the grid, it changes that club path and the angle attack into the golf ball. So golf, just gives you a little bit of insight there into the grid. Now, that was like a standard sort of setup with my feet. So I was very square to the target. I tried to swing exactly the same each time. There are other things that you can do by aiming differently. Also with the club face, that's quite important. So I knew the club path would change when I moved the ball further back. So I just opened the face a little bit just to help with that. So it's important where the club face is in relationship to the path. But you can see if you swing on plane on the grid, how it changes the sort of the path into the golf ball. So guys, if you've got any comments on the GRIDlife there, just put your comments in the box below. I'll try and get back to them. If you enjoyed the video, please give it a thumbs up, and I'll see you again next week for another video on golf tips. The most